Welcome to HFY Stories. Please subscribe to the channel. Your one click means the world to me. A glass cylinder touched the steel bench with a sharp click, and cold coffee sloshed against its third measurement mark. Across the room, the ventilation fans dropped into their night cycle while Sora pulled out the unused laboratory chair and placed her data tablet beneath the work lamp. Davin stared at the second drink she had brought him. 7 weeks earlier, the Velari linguist would not have entered his research bay unless the station was on fire or somebody needed a translation immediately. Now she had arrived after hours, claimed half his workspace, and apparently decided that explaining herself was optional. "The language section is undergoing maintenance," she said. "This room is sufficiently quiet." Davin moved a tray of root cultures aside. "Take the left table." She sat. Nothing else was said for almost an hour. Years later, that silence would be one of the details Davin remembered most clearly, not because anything dramatic happened during it, but because by then silence with Sora no longer felt like being alone. Getting there had taken 8 months, a badly placed seed pod, and one of the most uncomfortable requests she had ever made. At Corridor 11, Sora was known for functioning perfectly without company. She was an exceptional xenolinguist, intensely private, and famous for treating unnecessary conversation as if it were faulty equipment. Davin worked in xenobotany. Their professional lives barely touched. Their breakfasts did. Both had independently discovered that the commissary table beside the main filtration column was ideal for concentration. The machinery produced a constant low vibration that discouraged strangers from starting conversations. So every morning, Davin worked on botanical notes while Sora worked on language models. For 8 months, they occupied the same table and spoke only when required. Then, at precisely 8:14 one morning, Sora appeared inside his laboratory doorway. Davin lowered the cutting tool in his hand. She entered, sealed the door, checked the acoustic indicator, then faced him. Velari discomfort was easy to miss. Humans fidgeted. Velari became unnaturally motionless. Sora looked carved from metal. "I need your help with something unrelated to our assignments." Davin removed his gloves. "All right. There is also a possibility you may find the situation amusing." "That sounds promising." Her tail stiffened. He immediately raised a hand. "Sorry, no jokes." She studied him before continuing. "A seed burr is lodged in the fur along my upper back. The location prevents me from removing it safely." Davin blinked. Of every possibility his mind had generated, none had included gardening. "What species?" "Pelthric." Now he understood. A mature pelthric plant launched hooked seed bodies at anything passing near its branches. Davin had posted a station warning about the northern specimens weeks earlier. How long has it been caught? Long enough to become irritating. That means it has probably settled underneath the outer layer. I reached the same conclusion. He opened a specimen drawer and removed precision forceps. Sora did not move. Davin glanced at her. "Something wrong. My people are selective about physical contact." Her voice was controlled, but her tail had tightened further. "I considered other solutions first. You don't have to justify asking." "I wasn't justifying it." A pause. "I was making the conditions clear." Davin nodded. "Then my condition is simple. If anything hurts, tell me immediately." That seemed to satisfy her. She sat on a low laboratory stool and turned away from him. The burr was almost invisible beneath her silver dorsal fur. Davin found it only after separating several layers with the side of one finger. Pelthric hooks punished impatience. A direct pull caused dozens of backward-facing barbs to tighten at once. He caught the first tiny spine with the forceps and rotated it loose. One released. Sora's ears shifted slightly. You intend to count them. It gives you a progress report. That is acceptable. He continued. Working that close revealed details he had never noticed across the commissary. Sora's coat was not a single shade. The hairs darkened through the middle and became almost white near their tips. Davin focused on the burr. Another hook released. Then another. After several minutes he asked, "Why choose me?" "You wrote the plant warning. I didn't think anyone outside botany read those. I read station notices. All of them. The useful ones." He laughed quietly. Her ear turned toward him. Was that laughter directed at me? At myself? That is permitted. He freed another spine. Davin had learned during their silent breakfasts that asking Sora questions worked best when she could refuse without ceremony. "Can I ask something personal?" "You already have." "A second thing, then." She waited. "You almost never approach people socially. I can remember only a few times you initiated a conversation that wasn't work." Sora's shoulders rose by barely a millimeter. Why were those people exceptions? For several seconds, only the ventilation system answered. Then she said, one researcher was distressed and alone. Another was unknowingly damaging a plant from his home colony. The commissary attendant was preparing to request repairs for equipment I had already corrected. Davin mentally counted. That leaves one. The pause this time was longer. One conversation existed only as preparation, she said. You practiced it. Yes. But never said it. No. Davin saw the obvious question waiting in front of him. He left it alone. The decision seemed to relax something in her posture. 14 releases later, the seed body finally separated from the fur. Davin lifted it into the light. Every hook remained intact. Sora turned on the stool. For the first time, they were face to face at close range. Her amber eyes fixed on the specimen and then shifted to him. You managed it without breaking the structure. That was the plan. You are very precise, Davin. Hearing his name from her affected him far more than it reasonably should have. He cleared his throat and dropped the burr into a clear specimen container. Sora watched. You're preserving it. Perfect extractions are rare. You removed it from me. That is part of its collection history. A faint movement touched one corner of her mouth. Davin labeled the container and placed it among his samples. Sora followed its path with her eyes. I assume you have a system. Drawer 7. She stood. I'll remember where you put it. Then she left. After that, the changes were so small that neither of them could have identified the precise beginning. Sora started waiting a few minutes before opening her terminal at breakfast. She began pointing out details she had noticed about Davin's work. You stop concentrating after roughly 2 hours, she observed one morning. I take breaks. No, you change task type while remaining productive. That sounds less unhealthy. What do you do? The colony crossword. Sora considered that. I review irregular grammatical forms. For fun. For cognitive reset. That somehow sounds worse than work. It is different from work. 3 weeks after the Burr incident, she arrived with 2 drinks. One was prepared exactly the way Davin liked it. She placed it beside him without explanation. He accepted it under the same terms. The commissary attendant watched the exchange from across the room with such obvious interest The Davin turned his chair slightly away. 2 weeks later, Sora closed her tablet and asked, "How do humans determine when repeated companionship becomes courtship?" Davin nearly dropped his stylus. "There isn't a fixed conversion point. That is inefficient. Human relationships aren't standardized. I have gathered that." She asked for examples. Davin gave her several. Sora explained that Velari relationships normally passed through two deliberate stages. First came discussion, needs, limitations, uncertainty. Only after that came a clear statement of mutual intent. Humans, Davin explained, frequently attempted the same thing while pretending they were not doing it. Sora looked genuinely disturbed. That creates avoidable ambiguity. Yes. Why? We're talented that way. She opened her tablet again. I require more data. By the 7th week, she had begun working in his lab when her own workspace was inconvenient. By the 9th, she told him about home. The Velari system had 3 suns. Sora described mornings when separate bands of light crossed the same landscape at different angles. As a child, she had learned to recognize weather changes by how those colors overlapped. She had once expected never to leave. "What pulled you away?" Davin asked. "Languages." She looked through the station window. Eventually, there were questions I wanted answered somewhere else. Her voice softened. "Sometimes, when the station airflow changes before morning shift, it reminds me of home." Davin smiled. Sora immediately looked at him. "You are thinking something you have decided not to say." "That obvious." "To me." That night, Davin finally understood the unspoken conversation she had mentioned during the burr extraction. For months, Sora had wondered whether he genuinely wanted her at that corner table. Davin had never asked himself the same question because her presence had become comfortable before he noticed becoming attached to it. He had arrived at Corridor 11 after a lonely research posting. Somewhere between route reports, humming filters, and 2 people declining to make small talk, Sora had become part of what made the station feel stable. 2 weeks later, she appeared in his laboratory while he was revising a diagram of the Pelthric plants. She took the stool that had quietly become hers. "I've reached a conclusion." Davin put down the stylus. Sora rested both hands against her knees. "In my culture, discussing a possible bond requires stating what each person can sustain." Davin stayed silent. "I can sustain regular closeness," she continued. "I need direct communication. I need time alone without that being interpreted as rejection. And I do not want to decode hints that could have been spoken plainly." "I can agree to that." "You use hints." "I know. You also hide things in your facial expressions." "So I've been told." "By me." Despite himself, he smiled. Then he stopped hiding behind humor. "I can give you closeness too," he said, "and space when you need it, but there's something I should say clearly." Sora's eyes remained fixed on him. "I work better when you're here. I look for you at breakfast. When you don't come, I notice. When you bring me coffee, I notice that too." Her pupils widened. Davin continued before courage could fail. "I thought I liked the quiet corner. Turns out I like sharing it with you." Sora did not move. The ventilation fan clicked into a new cycle behind them. Finally, she said, "That is the kind of information I was asking for." "What about you?" She drew a slow breath. "I spent months wondering whether my presence mattered to you. After the incident with the burr, I stopped wondering whether your presence mattered to me." Davin felt his fingers tighten against the bench. Sora continued, "I have examined the uncertainty. I no longer require more evidence." She paused, not because she lacked words, But because this was the point where words mattered most. I choose this deliberately, Davin. His answer came without calculation. So do I. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Sora's tail finally relaxed. Their mornings afterward still contained long stretches without conversation. Sora still measured her coffee. Davin still ruined perfectly reasonable crossword answers by overthinking them. They still worked separately more often than together. But silence no longer contained a question. 3 months later, Davin reorganized his specimen records and reached the container from the first morning she had entered his lab. Pelthric burr, intact extraction. Below his original notation, a second hand had added a single word in precise Velari script. Recovered. Davin read it once. Then again. He understood exactly what he could ask her about it. He also understood why he did not need to. The drawer slid shut beneath his hand, and the narrow laboratory light moved across the metal label until the engraved number 7 disappeared into shadow.